Okay, this program is called Bright Line Eating, and there are 4 bright lines, and I want to introduce you to them. So the first bright line, the cardinal bright line, probably the most important bright line, if we had to pick one, is no sugar. Sugar, 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 no sugar is the first bright line. And I want to talk to you a little bit about why. Why no sugar? Well, because it's addictive. And Dr. Mark Hyman says it's 8 times more addictive than crack cocaine. Not than crack cocaine, than cocaine. Now, where did he get that statistic? It's 8 times more addictive than cocaine. Well, first of all, when they do brain scan research and they look at downregulation in the nucleus accumbens, the brain of somebody addicted to sugar looks worse than the brain of somebody addicted to cocaine, just as bad, if not worse. Like, what that means is that the dopamine receptors are burned out, they're downregulated, they're thin, they're weak, they're non-responsive, which means that you're in a state of a dearth of pleasure, a state of misery, a state of itchiness, a state of bleakness until you can go find something with sugar to eat again. Awful. Now, it's also true that in rats, if you pre-inject them to intravenous cocaine, so you shoot them up with cocaine over and over again, you give them cocaine shots, then they're quivering cocaine addicts. Now you give them a choice between cocaine or sugar, and they pick sugar. They're already addicted to cocaine, and they still would prefer sugar. Now, what's fascinating about that experiment is that it actually works with artificial sweetener too. Rats will prefer artificial sweetener over cocaine. There is something about the sweet taste on the taste buds themselves that has a direct connection to the addictive centers in the brain. So you do not need to be thinking about where is the sweet coming from. We just need to not be adding sweet things to our food. So let me just give you a description of what the bright line for sugar includes. The bright line for sugar includes obviously no table sugar, but it also includes no honey, no molasses, no maple syrup, no artificial sweeteners of any kind, including saccharin and stevia and Splenda and everything. Now, people always write in, what about stevia? Because you've heard maybe that stevia is more natural, that stevia doesn't dysregulate the blood sugar, but that extra sweet added to your food still has the direct link up to the addictive centers of your brain. So no stevia. I have seen in myself and others stevia lead to direct binges. So yeah, no stevia. Stevia is not on the food plan. There's also research on artificial sweeteners showing that it disrupts the gut microbiome and creates blood sugar dysregulation through the gut microbiome. So that's a different mechanism than direct insulin glucose manipulation. It actually goes through the gut microbiome, but ultimately creates the same impact, the same effect. Now, don't forget that when your blood sugar is dysregulated, when you've got insulin spikes happening and your baseline insulin level is rising, that causes an issue with leptin. Now, leptin is the hormone that the hypothalamus and the brainstem recognize that says, I'm not hungry anymore and I want to get active. And without the brain's ability to see leptin, the brain decides that you are literally physiologically starving and forces you to be sedentary and insatiably hungry. And this is why we see people sitting on the couch late into the night after they've already eaten a full dinner, eating and eating and eating as if they can't help themselves. And the reason is they can't. Their brains can't see their leptin. Now remember, insulin is what blocks leptin at the hypothalamus and at the brainstem. So we need to take great care to avoid things that are going to spike our insulin levels or rise our baseline insulin levels. So yeah, this is why, again, no sugar. So let's talk a little bit more about where the bright line exists, because people want to know about dates and raisins and things like that, fruit juice. All of those are actually off the plan. They're too concentrated. The sweetness is too concentrated for the amount of fiber in there. Whole real fruit is okay. And the difference is that fruit juice and dried fruit are concentrated to a degree that they create the dopamine and insulin dysregulation that we were just talking about. Whole real fruit actually doesn't. It has enough of the natural complement of fiber that it doesn't cause the same response. But notice also that in bright line eating, we don't eat whole real fruit by itself. Like, I think it would be a bad idea to eat a dish of pineapple at 3 in the afternoon. That's pretty sweet, and it would probably create a dopamine response and an insulin response that you don't want anything to do with. But note that we only eat fruit when we're eating a meal, and note that every single meal has protein in it. And lunch and dinner also have fat. Also, depending on which proteins you select for your breakfast, there's probably a decent amount of fat in there as well. So you're getting enough other macronutrients that are going to offset the glucose response from the whole real fruit that you eat. So that's why fruit is okay. And sweet potatoes are okay, and other types of vegetables are okay. Whole real food. And it's interesting, I think, that nature has created food that our brain responds to just fine. It's when we start to adulterate it that it creates a problem. So other than whole real fruit, whole real vegetables, the bright line for sugar pretty much cuts out everything else. We're not going to add anything sweet to our food at all, and we're not going to mess with our fruit in particular to make it unnaturally sweeter or strip the fiber out of it. Otherwise, we'll get into trouble. So that's the bright line for sugar.